morning. You have two options. You can lay there all day like that, or you and I can go out and do something. Do you want to go do something? You want to go somewhere? Well, stretch it out and let's get rocking, buddy. Good morning. Daze with Jordan the Lion begins now. All right, we've made it. It's playtime at the park. What's up with the dress? Pretty happening day out here at the park. A lot of people, a lot of photo shoots. I'm just following this guy. Well, good day, my friends. No cultural festivals today. 2 days in a row. We're not doing it again today. Hope you guys enjoyed those. I know those were a little different, but hey, I'd never been to either one, so I had to go check them out and see what they were all about. I had a blast at both of them, but I actually definitely like the Lotus Festival a little bit better. It's kind of funny, these people are trying to film some sort of running scene and they weren't really paying attention, and Jaw was squatting down taking a number 2 and they were running right for him. I'm like, oh, that's gonna be great footage. I can't wait till you review that one. Tongue out. He wants to play. John, go chase. So I think today what I was gonna do, I'm actually gonna do tomorrow, and what I was gonna do tomorrow, we'll actually go do today after we leave the park. I said, let's go get some water. So he's trotting off to the water fountain over here. Alright, it's been a good time at the park, but it's starting to get toasty, so all the dogs are hanging out in this one shaded spot over here. So, let's get going. What are you doing? That's right. The plan for today is to go visit the grave of this man. This is his debut album. It's out there. You would never get away with releasing this album now. I mean, there are jabs all over the map, but this is a man who made his name as Mr. Warmth. If you're younger, you might know him as the voice of Mr. Potato Head in the Toy Story movies, but it's Don Rickles. One of the greatest, if not the greatest, insult comic of all time. We're gonna go to your grave today, Don. Pay our respects. I believe that our man is down here. Now, this is actually a pretty recent gravestone because Don passed away in 2017 in April, and Jewish tradition is that you don't put up a headstone till a year after that. So if they have one up for him, yes, right here. A man so many loved. Oh, look at that. Somebody left a Dodger baseball schedule. You know, I'll tell you a funny story about the Dodgers and Don Rickles, but Don is known for being an insult comic, but he was one of the nicest people that anyone that knew him could ever meet. I think that's why he was so good at this, because he never meant any of it, and in fact he said, I'm not insulting people, I'm just over exaggerating things. Let's read the headstone. It says, beloved husband, dad, pop, brother-in-law, and friend. The world was a bright and better place because you were here. You will be remembered forever and ever with great love in our hearts. So very missed, rest in peace. Now Don's career was actually pretty interesting because he didn't start out to be a comedian at all. Actually, he first he was in the Navy right out of school, and he did 2 years of that, came out and went to the American Academy of Dramatic Arts in New York City. That's where he was from anyway. He was born in Queens. And Don set out to be an actor, and he said that the very first acting gig he got in a movie was next to Clark Gable in Run Silent Run Deep, which is a military movie, and of course since Don was in the Navy it was very fitting. Now he said that one of the funny moments on set was that the movie was also with Burt Lancaster, and Burt Lancaster was a bit of a method actor, and so while they would be in between scenes, Burt would be sitting there talking out loud about his character, the motivations of his character and everything to Don, and then Don said Clark would walk up and he'd go, "We got to get this guy out of here. I can't listen to any more of this crap." Like, just showing how completely differing the acting styles were, which I thought was just absolutely hilarious. But he had done Twilight Zones throughout the 50s. He would make guest appearances on various TV shows, including the Dean Martin Show. But what really got him started was that he was making more money by doing like these kind of seedy, dirty clubs in New York. And apparently Frank Sinatra's mom used to go watch him and liked him and said, "Frank, you got to go see this guy perform." And so the first night that Frank and all of his entourage showed up to perform, or to see Don Rickles perform, Don walked out and he says, "Frank, be yourself, stand up and hit somebody." And he said he got a good reaction, and from then on he said it was always a great reaction. He said in fact that's why they were such great friends, is that Frank was a good reactor to what Don was saying. He said that there was one time where like they spent so much time together. In fact, Frank is kind of credited with helping Don get his career off the ground, because once Frank saw him, Frank, you did everything you could to get him gigs and had him opening for him, got him into doing Vegas and doing bigger and better spots in different comedy clubs and stuff. And one of the times they were hanging out, they were in a steam room, and Don was cracking jokes, of course, and saying, "Hey, Frank, when are you gonna admit it? The pipes are rusty," you know. And this is like, you know, we're talking in the 50s and 60s when Frank was still like in his heyday. And he says that Frank says, "Guys, throw him out of here." And so they actually throw Don Rickles out of the steam room naked, and right outside the steam room they're like near, that's like a pool, like the pool for the hotel that they were staying at, and there are all these people standing there looking at this naked Don Rickles, and he stands up all confident and says, "What are you staring at? Haven't you ever seen a perfect body before?" So then it was in 1965 when Johnny Carson had Don Rickles on, and you know, those two got along famously. I mean, Don Rickles went on to do over 100 spots on Johnny Carson. Johnny would always have him on the couch, and that was always like a sign that that Johnny loved you. And Don could just fire him. I mean, just fire one-line insults at Johnny, and he loved him. And it was funny to see Johnny come back at him so many times. But over 100 performances on the show, they were best friends. And one of my favorites, when I was like, I spent, you know, a good part of the past weekend watching just all these old Don Rickles roasts and different appearances on things. And one of those moments that I really loved was seeing this time where they were doing a bit where Johnny Carson was getting a massage, and Don Rickles came out and he was doing the massage, and when Johnny realized that, they start like kind of tussling and battling, and Johnny ends up picking up Don and throwing him in like a hot tub or like a wading pool that they had on set, which was really funny. But I mentioned this Dodger schedule. Don was a big fan of the Dodgers, and he was also a great friend of Tommy Lasorda's. And he mentioned in an interview, one of the funny stories that happened there at Dodger Stadium was that Tommy and Don kind of used to look alike. And until like Don said, Tommy now looks like he was walking around with a basketball, is what he said. But he was hanging out in the dugout during a game, and Tommy looks over at him and says, "Don, go put on a jersey. I'm going to have you take this pitcher out of the game." And he goes, "What?" And he goes, "Yeah, go put on a jersey. Go put on my jersey and come back out here. I'm going to have you take that pitcher out of the game." So he says, I can't do that. And he goes, and you do get fined for that. The Dodgers did get fined. Tommy Lasorda did get fined. Somebody got fined for it. So Don goes, changes clothes, comes up, and Tommy says, go in there and take out the pitcher. So they call time. And Don says, in those days, I could even walk like Tommy. So he walks out to the mound, tells the pitcher, who was like a Latin guy, he says, you know, you're going to have to give me the ball. He says, I'm not giving you the ball. He says, next thing you know, they start fighting, and the umpire comes out and notices it's Don Rickles and says, Don, can you get me 2 tickets to the Dean Martin show? So that's just a little bit of Don's history. Now, he made his name in tons of movies. He was in Casino, and mostly he was known for all the Dean Martin roasts. You should just go watch the roast. Nothing can do justice more than just watching him perform. He loved to razz Frank Sinatra, Ronald Reagan, all those guys, and would even befriend young guys in his older years. He was best friends with Bob Saget, Jeff Ross, Jimmy Kimmel, Johnny Depp, and unfortunately, you know, in 2017 we lost him. I believe it was kidney failure. Well, my battery's about to die, so we're gonna head out of here. Just wanted to come pay a little respect to Don Rickles and go watch him. If you've never seen Dirty Work, he was phenomenal in Dirty Work. Just a really beloved guy, but a great insult comic. And his best friend was Bob Newhart, so that ought to tell you something. Once said, Bob Newhart's a great comedian. If you don't believe me, ask him. Rest in peace, Don Rickles. When Don Rickles' daughter got into comedy, he gave her a great piece of advice he used to always talk about. He said, I told her, rejection, rejection, rejection. Yeah, he said, just always remember that even though you're going to get a lot of rejections, little by little, the more you work and the more you work on what you're doing, the better you'll get and the more you'll succeed. So just always take it little by little, which I think is not only a great piece of advice, but I use it in my everyday life as well. I have a spare rib that I think he wanted. Now, guys, we are going to head down to Don Rickles Star on the Hollywood Boulevard Star Walk of Fame. I think that my introduction to Don Rickles was he had a short-lived Fox TV show with Richard Lewis, and then I saw him on Casino, and he was in one of my favorite episodes of Tales from the Crypt with the ventriloquist dummy. He has a ventriloquist dummy of him. It's a great one. Now, Don roasted and was friends with every member of the Rat Pack, and so one time Billy Crystal asked him why he never joined the Rat Pack, and he said he was too talented. That's why. Now, like I said, I can't recommend Dirty Work enough. You've got Norm Macdonald, Artie Lang, and it's directed by Bob Saget with Don Rickles. I mean, it's hilarious. Well, that billboard looks like the early No Doubt Tragic Kingdom era type stuff. Is that what she's doing now? Is she gonna do some No Doubt stuff in Vegas? One of the reasons I think Don was so good at what he did was because he was so natural at it. I mean, that's who he was. In fact, he said he never ever prepared any jokes, never went out there with jokes written or anything. He had just, early on in his career, been responding to hecklers, and that's where his style came from. So he just got in the habit of going out and talking to people in the crowd, and that's how his jokes would come about. So for most all of his career, he would pretty much be known for that kind of humor, that where it would be a badge to be ridiculed by Don Rickles in a performance. And in fact, he would do this so long and so often, he never retired. He said that's what kept his mind sharp, even was doing marathon roasts in Las Vegas. And he said the highlight of his career was when he was invited and got to do the Ronald Reagan's second inaugural dinner roast. One of my favorite Don Rickles moments was at some sort of dinner. He was there and Julia Roberts is in the room, and he says, Julia, you live 2 blocks from me at the beach. You've never once come by and said hi. And she yells out, less than 2 blocks. He goes, hey, 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 you don't have a line here. And I actually did get to meet Don Rickles one time. He was a guest on the Jimmy Kimmel show one of the nights that I went there when I used to go to the show all the time. Oh wow, they took it down. If you see, there's like a different colored brick right there above the pedestal thing, like right there. There used to be a Space Invader piece of art there that's no longer there anymore. That's a bummer. What's this exhaust periscope looking thing? What is that? What is that? We got a honking party here. And Don's Star is actually right in front of the El Capitan building where that big radio tower is. Incidentally, that's where Jimmy Kimmel broadcasts from. Well, there it is. Over 100 performances on Johnny Carson. The man who could say anything to Frank Sinatra got a star. And even after all the years of chipping away and rejection, he even got an Emmy Award when they made a documentary about his life. Gotta love it. Right there in front of the El Capitan Theater and Ghirardelli's. That can only mean trouble. I was really surprised when I was preparing for this vlog to find out that Don Rickles got started out also doing impressions. Never would have thought that, but he said he used to do Clark Gable and Jimmy Cagney and people like that. And there's our local friendly dinosaur busting through the top of Ripley's. And the reason I didn't go to his house like sometimes I do is because he lived in a gated community, so couldn't get access to it. What's up with that lonely umbrella just sitting there in the middle of the street? This is one of the busiest streets in town. I don't know how somebody hasn't hit that yet or what it's doing there. Is this gonna be like an American Beauty moment where it just starts floating up through the sky? We just start watching it drift up into the air. Don Rickles always credited the success of his career with Frank Sinatra and Johnny Carson, basically. So once he won them over, that was when he was a real success. What's up with that half a face right there? Oh, you know what else Don was really good in was the beach movies with Frankie and Annette. Those are really good. Must be a new toilet day. Fun fact, Johnny Carson's the one who gave him the name Mr. Warmth. Speaking of Frank Sinatra, well, half of him. So I mentioned that this week we were going to make up that interview that we didn't get to do last week, but I just called and they said that the one of the roads out there is actually closed because of rock slides and one washed out. So we're going to postpone it one more week and then we're going to go out to Big Bear and do that interview. Go play with somebody. What are you doing? Go get him, Ja. Can I have your tail? Doesn't even move, doesn't even flinch. Well, I wanted to send a thank you out to Rhiannon Breswick and Angela Chisholm. And now you know a little bit about Mr. Warmth. I hope you'll take a little bit of time to go to YouTube and type in Don Rickles and watch a little bit and sit and laugh for a while. He was the man. Have a great night. We'll see you all tomorrow. Goodbye. If I was a guy, I would try